Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Tuesday. It's back to work for me today. I told you that yesterday. The reality feels, it's fine. You know, I like my job, but I like break too. I really like break. But I bought myself a present yesterday because all our mugs are from local artists. And this local artist, in addition to being part of the Arts Partnership, is also a really good friend of mine. So I had to have a mug of Studio E, Emily Williams Wheeler. So look at the handle. If you know Emily's work, you know that this is perfectly in keeping with Emily's fabulous art. I don't know why it's gotten pink. It's like it can't quite deal with all of the intense color. Look at how sunburned I look. I promise I'm not sunburned. Look at this beautiful mug. Isn't that delightful? Let me see if I can. It's hot. Look at she designed inside. Can you see there's even at the very bottom that little blue dot? Dumping tea on the ground. Okay, I'll stop that now.
You could have
Thank
maybe
you, Emily.
not put something in it if you wanted to show
Oh,
the
that's
inside
an
of it.
excellent point. That is something I could have considered. That's just mint tea. So thank you for the mug, Emily. I'm ecstatic. And I know that she has more mugs, plates, and bowls if you go to studioe.com. And then I also have to call a shout out because some of you watching know this fabulous artist. She does many things, but this is an Ann Casey scarf, and it's so beautiful. I've had it for a long time, but yeah, it's just a day of surrounding myself with art from friends. So what a lucky day for me. And you, Dr. Mary. Lucky day for you.
Thank you.
It is Gratitude Tuesday. And I actually think this topic has a lot of value at the start of the year in particular. Because I read a thing today that said, you don't need to wait till the start of the year to set intentions or make goals or reflect back. That could happen in August. It doesn't matter. But we've become kind of accustomed to doing it at the start of the year. So we were talking today about we actually were talking about the vision board that I wrote about yesterday, and I'll share that blog post on this link. But, that's all about communication. So that's really where today's conversation came from. So take it away, Ms. Mary.
Oh, good Lord, I'm talking. So one of the things we had to do every day when I was in rehab is we had to fill in a slip of paper that said, how are we going to improve our communication with others? So one of the questions was that you filled in, what are your 3 goals for the day as far as learning something? So, the idea was to say, I'm going to be open to learning another way of dealing with my addiction. I'm going to be open to listening to what people say when we join in group discussions to talk about each other. I'm going to be open to actually taking in that information. I will be open to see if I can give out constructive, kind communication. But the bottom line was that the best way to improve today, summed up in 3 words, was communication, communication, communication. And it does, actually, I was very skeptical at the start, of course, but it works. And it's a wonderful thing to just be able to really communicate. And I don't know if you want to lead into this one, but it's not just for that. It's for every aspect of your life. You having an issue with someone you work with, communicate with them. You're having an issue at home, communicate at home. If something you think would be better served if you actually talk about it, talk about it.
Even when it's hard.
Yeah.
Maybe especially when it's hard.
And if someone comes up to you and wants to talk to you about something, part of communication is listening. And not just look like you're listening. Don't be a teenager, actually listen. And you brought this up. I don't know if you want to talk about this part of it, but also if you think there's something wrong with you, communicate with a medical professional.
Yes. I was thinking about our conversation with Grant Severson, the medical doctor, and the fact that he could convince his own doctor that he had no drinking problem. I think about all the times that you and I were in the emergency room or at the doctor, and I would be in the room with you, and the doctor would ask you how much you drank, and you would say, maybe 1 whiskey a day. And, you know, I always knew that was a lie. Always. And I have to believe that the doctor knew it was a lie. Doctors know stuff. I mean, Maz did not look like a healthy human being. So the fact that he got away with it for so long tells you that communication, even with people who should be able to do it easily and effortlessly, like medical doctors, is challenging around this subject. I read once that one of the great problems around our incredible weight gain in this country is that doctors actually feel uncomfortable having honest, real conversations with their patients. That they don't say to them, boy, you've put on 20 pounds this year. Maybe we need to talk about that. Because it's hard and it sounds judgmental and it's coming from a place where the other person maybe doesn't want to hear it. So I think alcohol might be very similar in the medical profession, that it's hard to talk about it. Or the religious profession, you know, ministers and priests get called on to advise and counsel people too. And those are hard conversations to have. So we sort of pass it off and think, well, they didn't bring it up, so I won't either. And I think that is how a lot of couples deal with addiction in their relationships. The addict knows something's wrong. The spouse of the addict knows something's wrong. And occasionally they will dip their toes in or dive into the conversation and it never goes well. So then you sort of stop communicating.
Because part of communication is listening. Here's another example, actually, that I don't want to drug anything. Well, I can only talk about myself, really. So when I was less than a year sober, I went to the doctor because I was just scratching. I always had childhood eczema, and I always, every now and then I get a flare up of it, but I actually just really did gouge most of the skin off my shins. So I went to the doctor, and he said, well, he said, what do you think's the matter? I said, I have no idea. And he said, well, you're less than a year sober, do you think you're stressed? And of course I started off with trying to be stoic, saying, oh, I'm never stressed, I'm good, I don't drink anymore, everything. And then I stopped myself and thought, yeah, that could be it. He said, well, have you talked to anyone about it? I said, well, yeah, I try and talk to my wife about it, and
your wife, the arts advocate.
But you do listen. You always got
Yes.
the part of the communicate. And he said, well, I'm going to give you a cream to stop the itch, but if you've got to think about it and talk about it. So the itch went away. Dana and I talked about it, and she said, maybe that's just your go-to thing for stress. And we talked about it, and it made sense. And don't scratch me legs anymore.
Yeah.
It can be that simple.
Yes. Or
What-
it can be extremely complicated because, of course, you've heard us say this many times, but there was no shortage of attempted communication on my part to you while you were drinking. But I think this is an important component to that. Nobody, addict or not, wants to start a conversation like this. You're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Nobody. That's never going to work.
That's never good.
I hope that our friends who shall remain nameless are all right with me sort of co-opting their story. But they have an amazing story from early in their marriage, which gets brought up over and over and over now, which is this. They had been married a brief period of time, weeks or maybe a few months. She was making dinner. He came home from work. He went into the bathroom. He came out of the bathroom holding a garbage can and a Q-tip. And he said to her, here's another thing I hate about you. And then went on to indicate that she missed the garbage, often putting Q-tips in it. And she did this. Another thing? You have a list of things you hate about me? And, you know, we really laugh about it now because they've been married, I think, 25 years or some really fabulous amount of time. And And I mean, we all laugh about it. I hope they're actually laughing about it because I bring it up a lot. Maybe I need to make sure that it's okay that I bring it up a lot.
Communication. There you
Yes,
go.
but my point is that conversation did not need to go that way. But of course it went that way because who in their right mind wants to have someone start the conversation with, here's the next terrible thing about you?
Yeah.
So communication is fraught because we have an agenda with starting a conversation. I have an agenda for Daily Dose. I want it to spur you on to listening, thinking, and acting. And some of that acting, I hope, will be that you're sharing this content with other people in your life who you think will find value in it so that we can grow our audience. If I didn't have that as a goal, then maybe we would just get on with no plan in place and riff. Because we would think, well, it doesn't matter if anybody's watching or not. It does matter. It matters to me. It matters to us. I hope it matters to you.
Yeah.
So even when it's not about something serious like addiction, there is always an agenda. Think back to every conversation you had with your teenager about cleaning their bedroom, or any conversation you had as a teenager about getting more rights in your life, or anytime you've sat down with your boss and what you really want is a raise, but you start it with, wow, how was your holiday? Oh, that's so great. You went sledding? Oh man, I love sled. And you have this whole long circulatory conversation that finally you do oh, by the way, I was thinking I should have a raise. And then you move along, or whatever you do. So that agenda piece is really, really important. You don't need to change it. You just need to recognize it. And then I think you need to be honest about it. And when the power balance is so out of balance with an addict and a non-addict, the non-addict has as much responsibility to take responsibility for their role in how communication happens as possible. Because if you go all the way back to maybe our second or third episode, what we said was there are 3 legs to the stool, and every single person has a stool.
Yeah.
It's not just the addict who's focusing on that 3rd leg. It's the non-addict too. And if communication is the stool, and you are a leg, and your spouse is a leg, what's that 3rd leg? That is where communication can come in, and your purpose behind the conversation is the 3rd leg. I thought I was starting conversations to help bring insight to your addiction. But what I was actually probably doing was trying very hard to force Maz to say, you're right, I'm wrong, I'll stop. Well, who likes to say that?
And it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It certainly doesn't work.
One of the only thing I can stress from the addict point of view, or for if you really are, I mean, if you've just got something that you do that you don't want to change, but it's actually
problematic.
Kind of problematic. You have to. Part of communication is, and I'm going to say it again for the 3rd time now, listening. Just accept what you're listening to. That's also the hard part of communication, and that's what that thing we filled in every day was. We actually got to the point where you start thinking, well, if I'm going to communicate, maybe I should know what to talk about, which kind of means that I'll have to listen.
I have to tell you another funny story from my life. So a dear friend and I went to graduate school together, and we developed a 3rd dear friend. And probably our 2nd semester of graduate school, he was really depressed.
I've just worked out where you're going for this.
He was really, really depressed. Like, he was wearing his pajamas under his work clothes. And he was putting on weight, and he wasn't doing very well. And out of a place of care and concern, my friend and I decided to stage kind of an impromptu intervention. And we walked into the office that the 3 of us shared. We shared it with 5 people, but nobody else was in the office, so it was the 3 of us. And I don't know why we decided that we thought this would be helpful, but we basically cornered our poor depressed friend and laid out for him all the things that were wrong with him and everything he needed to fix so that his life would be better. You know how much better someone will feel about themselves if you tell them everything that's wrong with them. So we laid this whole thing out. We kind of good cop, bad copped it. And we finished, or we took a breath, which gave him the opportunity to step in. And he said, truly one of the most profound sentences I have ever heard in my life, because it shut the thing right down.
Oh my God.
He said, those are valid criticisms, and I thank you. And he went back to work. And my friend and I looked at each other, and we had a realization that A, we were done, and B, he was not going to make one change, nor was he going to allow us to bully him. It was genius. It shuts down every conversation. There's no emotion to it. There's no anything. You just acknowledge and ignore. I'm going to say it to you again. Those are valid criticisms, and I thank you. I've used that phrase many, many times. I mean, he said that to us more than 20 years ago.
He did, I think he must have listened. I like to think he'd listened.
Well,
to
he did kind of come out of it, which was great.
Because
that was the purpose.
He kind of did us a solid, because he said to me
Well, he's the reason we know each other.
He said to me about a year later, I was in Duffy's with him, and he says, "Why aren't you dating anyone?" I said,
No, this was before.
Was this before you two had that conversation?
Oh, I don't know, actually. It doesn't matter. It probably wasn't. No, it wasn't.
So he said to me, "Why aren't you dating anyone?" I said,
Sorry.
"This town's full of blondes. I like redheads." So he phoned Dana up, and that's when we had our first conversation. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you for that. That was a valid criticism,
That was
and
a
we do
valid
thank you
criticism.
for that.
I do thank you for that too. So there you go. Communication. There you go.
Yes. So figure out today how to be truthful with yourself, how to communicate fairly and honestly with other people,
And
how
listen.
and how to listen. Have an excellent day.
Have a good day.
Okay, I think there's enough out of my mug that I can actually show you now.
No,
No,
see?
there sure is not. Sorry. Okay, bye. Have a good day.
Bye.